Hi everyone, today I am going to describe how a constructivist would analyze the tensions between China and the United States. So, international events such as tensions between China and the United States can be analyzed through different international relations theories. Each theory you look through will make the event look pretty different. So, for a little review, you can think of perspectives as if there are different lenses to view events through. The three main international relations perspectives are realism, liberalism, and constructivism. However, there are multiple other perspectives such as radicalism, Marxism, and feminism. Today, I'm going to be focusing on constructivism. Constructivism is one of the three main international relations theories I mentioned. It's relatively new, from the late 20th century, and constructivists observe how cultural norms, ideas, and values impact international relations. For constructivists, events can be explained by the norms and identities of the states or individuals involved. In this theory, threats are socially constructed. So if the United States starts to think China is an enemy, then it will become an enemy. Like realists and liberals, constructivists acknowledge that the international system is anarchaic because there is no overarching government. Constructivists claim that states decide to go to war or cooperate based on social norms and ideas. Constructivists also say that socialization and a diffusion of ideas and norms across borders is a key part of avoiding conflicts. They say states with similar identities are more likely to cooperate, and states with contrasting identities are likely to engage in conflict. In addition to looking through different perspectives, you can look through different levels of analysis. So these levels of analysis are the vantage point that you observe an event from. The vantage point can be zoomed in to different levels from individual people to the whole international system. The levels of analysis are individual, state/domestic, and systemic. So today we're going to be looking at the state level, also called the domestic level. We're going to be analyzing China-US relations through a constructivist lens and a domestic zoom level. But first, let's go into some China and United States history. In 1943, China became the People's Republic of China. So this was a communist government that overthrew the previous nationalist government. Since the United States supported the overthrown nationalist government, this created tension between the United States and the new government in China. A big point of tension between the United States and China was the Korean War. In the Korean War, the United States supported South Korea. Constructivists would say this because the South Korean government is more similar to the United States government. South Korea is considered a democratic republic, much like the United States. And South Korea and the United States share these values of democracy in their government. China, on the other hand, supported North Korea, which has a socialist government that is more similar to China's communist values. China and the United States saw these governments with their shared values and rushed to their aids. The Korean War was the first military conflict between the United States and China since the Boxer Rebellion in 1900. Following the Korean War, the United States and China had limited relations until 1971, when China invited the U.S. ping-pong team into their state. This was called ping-pong diplomacy. In 2000, the U.S.-China Relations Act of 2000 was put into place. Since then, through trade, the U.S. and Chinese economies have become intertwined. Although trade deficits and intensifying international rivalries remained a source of tension. In 2018, the tension escalated into a full-out trade war between these two powerful states. Here we have a quote from the Council on Foreign Relations describing a 2018 event. The Trump administration announces sweeping tariffs on Chinese imports worth at least $50 billion in response to what the White House alleges is Chinese theft of U.S. technology and intellectual property. So, of course, China retaliated with its own trade restrictions, and tensions continued to grow. The United States and China tried to have talks and discussions about trade. Eventually, in 2019, these discussions fell through, and the United States imposed higher tariffs on China. Constructivists would say that this lack of cooperation is because conflicting ideas and values between these two powerful states. In the same year of 2019, the United States added to tensions by supporting Hong Kong's pro-democracy protesters. This is a great example of how the shared values of democracy lead the United States to support democratic states such as Hong Kong, or rather the Hong Kong protesters, and they denounce non-democratic states such as China. We saw in Hong Kong that the United States supported democracy because it went with our beliefs, and China did not support democracy because it went against their values. So another example of this can be applied to this year when China refused to condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Yet again, we see the United States supporting the Democratic Republic in Ukraine and China seeming to support Russia. It is important to note that Russia is no longer considered communist, although communist ideologies and values are still prevalent in Russia today. Tensions between the United States and China continue to grow today as China grows economically and becomes more powerful. Constructivists would ask, are we constructing an enemy in China and vice versa? If you analyze international relations at a domestic level through a constructivist perspective, you would expect to see states, such as the United States and China, cooperating or fighting based on their social norms, ideas, and values. In the case of China and the United States, we see conflicting social norms and identities. One big one is the democratic ideologies versus communist ideas. China is a communist state, whereas the United States has these democratic capitalist values. These contrasting values would explain why there is tension between these two superpowers. Another constructivist factor to take into account is that these two states do not necessarily have to be enemies, although if they construct each other to be enemies, it will happen. Constructivists would argue that China is seen as a threat to the United States because the United States socially constructed them as a threat, and vice versa. A paper by Lieutenant Colonel Brian Patridge on constructivism regarding the U.S. and China says, if the United States continues to say that China is a competitor or enemy, then it eventually will construct this very situation through speech acts. Overall, the United States and China have different values that can make cooperation very difficult. However, this isn't to say that China and the United States have to be enemies, although if they are constructed to be enemies, they will be. Here's my bibliography. I highlighted an article from Lieutenant Colonel Brian Patridge of the United States Army. His essay on constructivism asks, is the United States making China an enemy? Thought it was very good. I recommend you give it a read. So thanks for listening.